Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Andrew Moran, Graham Noble, Dave Patterson, and Scott Cosenza. And this is the Conservative 5, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. On today's episode, Unchained, an American Melody. We'll take a look at the representative from Wyoming and try to decipher why she is self-destructing in CHENEY Unchained. What's her problem? In our segment, Progressives on the Run, our panel will share the telltale signs of a failing coup attempt. Red state blackout? You betcha. That long, dark winter Biden promised is now a very hot, dark summer.
Heading to a recession.
Liberty Nation's in-house expert economist is here with the panel to give you a bit of discouraging news in our segment called The R Word, Recession. And finally, we'll lighten things up a bit with Just for Fun Volume 13. This week, we get personal. All this and more coming up on this edition of the Conservative 5. Wyoming Representative Liz Cheney seems to have lost her grip. She's been after President Trump for years. She joined forces with the likes of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and the long list of her transgressions against the Republican Party is growing. It's as if she's begging to be booted out of office. Is this a divine calling? Is she a true believer in her quest to rid the planet of Donald Trump? Graham, why the continued self-sabotage? From where does Cheney's Trump derangement syndrome emanate?
Liz Cheney, the Republican Hillary Clinton. What plans she had for herself and for the party, she likely believed it was her destiny to lead back to a glorious neoconservative future in which the political DC swamp dwellers amassed power and riches while America's working class marched off to die in glorious battle. The daughter of a former VP, Mr. Go F Yourself, the man seen as the puppet master behind George Bush Jr. How could she fail until Trump came along and forever altered the direction of the Republican Party? Then, seeing her chance slipping away, she went scorched earth. As Liberty Nation's senior political analyst, Mr. Tim Donner, suggested in a recent article, nod to Mr. Cosenza's The Uprising podcast there, Cheney may well have believed that if she destroyed Trump's legacy, Republicans would see the error of their ways and rush into her arms. So basically, Lisa, jealousy and bitterness, just like Hillary, McCain, Romney, all the other would-be and never going to be presidents.
Does anybody remember the days when just the name Cheney would send Democrats spinning out of control?
Well, I would say after that opening from Graham, I don't think he should be in the woods in Wyoming anytime soon whatsoever. After that beautiful opening there.
It was September 11th, by the way, that killed Cheney. That's when he went from a limited government advocate to this big government pro-war guy. We're all in spending, all in. He was the hero who told Al Gore during the vice presidential debate that, yes, plastic guns were okay, were a good thing. Every kind of basically, you can't believe this, right? Because it's so outrageous in the pro-freedom camp. No, Cheney responded, yes, I can. But that all went away after September 11th, and he switched gears and same for his issue, it looks like.
Yeah, but what's funny is that everyone's complaining about the Democrats embracing the Cheney name. But why did Republicans in Wyoming elect Liz Cheney in the first place? Why did they pick a Cheney on the ballot when knowing how disastrous her father was and how disastrous of her neoconservative agenda she would be? So the Republicans and Democrats are at fault for just loving this woman, on the other side of the issue.
My theory is this, and Dave, maybe you can help us out or tell me where I'm wrong. Trump went ballistic during the 2016 campaign on Bush Cheney. Mm-hmm. I mean, he talked over and over about, the war and, the warmongers. And, he made Bush and Cheney look pretty bad. I think this is like daddy's little girl getting revenge.
Well, I think that when you start to talk about the Bush Cheney administration, that you start to have to pull back the thread on this. And, after 9/11.
I thought you were going to say the curtain, the Wizard of Oz.
No. Pulling the thread back, you find that very few presidents in the history of the United States have had a more popular polling than Bush Cheney after 9/11. let's face it, 9/11 was an extraordinarily unique event in the United States history. And to suggest that in any way that they mishandled that is to not take history very seriously. They did a tremendous job of dealing with something that was so unique and had never happened before on the shores of the United States. So I give them high marks. No administration is perfect by any means, but when each day brings you something that no one else has ever encountered before, I think that overall, I'm going to give them high marks.
Okay, but
I must say I am stunned at Dave's analysis of the Cheneys and Bush to suggest that they did an excellent job. I mean, perhaps I was only 13 years old, but looking back in history, Patriot Act, trying to blame Saddam Hussein for the war in Iraq, invading Iraq, not having a plan in Afghanistan, and then of course all the domestic policies that before, like especially on the economy. I don't know how there could be any silver lining whatsoever with the Bush administration. Bush, in my opinion, was just as bad as Joe Biden right now, without all the enhanced interrogation
and not going after Osama bin Laden when we had him pinned down in that valley in Pakistan where he was. We could have discreetly taken him out, him and his lieutenants. I just want to add, I couldn't disagree more with your analysis, Dave. They tried to impose a national ID card. It was a giant, massive power grab that ignored the perpetrators of this, who we're still doing business with today. Joe Biden on his knees in front of the Saudi royals. And we know that they were deeply involved in aiding and abetting these attacks on America. We didn't go after them. We made wars in all these other countries that had nothing to do with the September 11 attacks. And we didn't go after the perpetrators of it until a decade afterwards.
As part of the Bush-Cheney administration, as I was.
By the way, your part was great, Dave, just to be clear.
You did a really good job, Dave.
Yeah, I spent the money very frugally. But the fact is that people criticize them because of what they see as a precipitous invasion of Iraq, and nothing could be further than the truth. I mean, when you look at the over and over Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz testifying before the congressional committees, explaining that it wasn't just the weapons of mass destruction. It was the 17 United Nations resolutions that Saddam Hussein absolutely just walked away from. It was the lousy administration of the food for oil. It was the terrible destruction that Saddam Hussein placed on his own people with his chemical attacks. All of these things combined to raise the hackles of the Bush and Cheney administration and were fundamental to the decisions to go into Iraq.
Graham, before you lay into Dave, instead of relitigating Bush-Cheney, I want to go back to the daughter here. What is her problem, and where is she going with this? What does she hope to accomplish with this?
Well, I think very much it's, all the factors we've covered, and definitely what you said about the, kind of daddy's little girl trying to get revenge for all the mean things that Trump said about her. Question of, as I said earlier, Trump really taking the party in a direction that ultimately means her political future is essentially, put on ice, if not, completely obliterated. I mean, she doesn't fit in with Trump's America First agenda by any means. And I think she really believed that she would end up at some point behind the Resolute desk, leading the Republicans to this future, which Trump just completely snatched away from her.
I have one theory, though. I think that Liz Cheney, she's trying to jockey for a position on MSNBC and become the new Claire McCaskill. I think she wants to be trying to get that $1 million position or a guest or a host or something. And MSNBC says, hey, look, we're intellectually diverse. We have a Republican on MSNBC. So watch our deteriorating network.
I will say I've never seen such a volte-face as what the Democratic Party has done with Dick Cheney. I mean, talk about a love-hate relationship.
He was Darth Vader to them for a generation.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't blame them. I don't blame the Democrats for portraying him as Darth Vader. Sorry, Dave.
That's okay. Everybody in Canada is, entitled to their opinion.
I mean, one thing we've learned from since 2016, one thing we've learned is that no matter how much the left hates you, the moment you say something bad about Donald Trump, then all is forgiven and you're their favorite person.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Well, Ms. Cheney seems to be aiming a loaded handgun at her political career. Perhaps her famously misfiring father taught her a few things at the range. Thanks, panel. The little darlings of the Democratic Party, yes, those progressives, have seemed to have lost their oomph. High-profile elected officials in the movement have recently come under fire, and progressives are suffering the consequences of their, shall we say, socialist leanings in the primaries. These progressive radicals look to be going down in flames this year. But the primary season is in full swing, and there are still races to be won. Scott, I know you've been keeping a keen eye on those fresh-faced leftists. What say you?
Well, it does seem to be their receding or lowering tide for progressives across the nation. We saw Chesa Boudin, I think is how we say his name.
I think it's Chesa Boudin.
Chesa Boudin lost his bid for to be DA of San Francisco. And if San Francisco isn't a safe place for a communist George Soros DA, then where in the nation can one gain safety? They think there's a 6-1 registration advantage for Democrats over Republicans in San Francisco. And of course, we don't have to get into any statistics to know it's probably the most liberal big city in the country. and they threw him out on his ear. And I think it's just the notion that these progressive policies, the reality that the people have to live in once they're enacted, like you can't go to the drugstore because it closed because they don't prosecute shoplifting claims, becomes a bit much to live through. George Gascon is again with the pronunciation. It's going to be a triple pronunciation thread here for the DAs in L.A. Featured. He got a vote of no confidence of, I think, 9 out of 10 associate DAs. And where I'm sitting now in Loudoun County, Virginia, which saw a lot of controversy, of course, with the prosecution or lack thereof of a trans person who attacked a woman in a high school bathroom. That DA has now been removed from a criminal case by a Virginia judge for not basically prosecuting the case effectively, and gone to a more conservative prosecutor in another part of the state. So they are in full retreat.
Wait a minute, unless I missed something, and I'm not going to let you go until you talk about your home city, the city of brotherly love, and the DA there.
Well, the DA there is probably the most successful and sort of the initial.
Larry Krasner, are we talking about the same guy?
Yeah.
You're saying successful and Krasner in the same
Krasner won re-election handily. And so he, in terms of where the rubber meets the road in the polls, getting his job back, Krasner got his job back. So he's kind of safe. It's the rest of them that are doing, having more troubles. And I think that as each additional layer of dreck that the administration puts on us, whether it's the inflation, whether it's the interest rates, whether it's the economy tanking, jobs availability, each one makes the consequences of all the others harder to bear. If you just can't get diapers at the store, but you got a job and gas is $3 a gallon, it's not so bad, but everything all at once. So Krasner got in, I think, with his reelection, Lisa, under that sort of bar with all these other things cascading down, but these other ones, not so much.
Now, Graham, you were early in digging into Boudin and his illustrious past and present, and God knows what his future is now.
Yeah, as I wrote recently, he's kind of like the poster child for this radical kind of Soros-funded socialist agenda. I mean, has all the great bona fides from a left-wing point of view. His parents were in prison for a botched armed robbery. They were, hardcore leftists.
The Weather Underground, right?
Yes, the Weathermen or the Weather Underground, absolutely. And then even, I believe it was Bodine's mother's father, I believe, was also an attorney who at one point represented Fidel Castro, something like that. So,
And Paul Robeson, the other one of America's most famous communists.
Right. Yeah, there you go. And so, what a great pedigree that guy has from that left-wing perspective. And, it makes you wonder, as Scott alluded to, if you come from that pedigree and you're in San Francisco of all places and they throw you out, that's not a good sign for the future of the progressive agenda, I would say.
Well, the progressives are going down. I mean, one by one. And then you see the I guess, institutional progressives like AOC who voted against the bill that would protect the Supreme Court justices' families and the justices themselves. I mean, is that really still popular out there, Dave?
It's not popular out beyond the Washington Beltway. I mean, the feeling and belief here in the great unwashed is that these people are lunatics and have no grasp of reality whatsoever. And unfortunately, rather than confronting them, they tend to dismiss them and look for people who have a grasp on the way things really are.
Andrew, I'm wondering if there is really a nexus, though it's not often talked about, between progressives hitting the skids in the primaries and what's going on with the Biden inflation economy mess that we're in.
What's funny is that a lot of these progressives, they advance the exact same policies that caused this mess. They actually want to go further. I mean, look at the student loan issue. The student loan issue is a prime example of this. People like AOC, they want to cancel $1.5 trillion student loans. This would exacerbate inflation because now you have $1.5 trillion going to be spent, going to be put back into the economy, and you have a greater supply of the cash with too few goods. So that's another issue. The progressive, they want to remove the fossil fuel industry. Well, you look what happened with Biden declared war on the fossil fuel industry. Now you have $5 gasoline, you have $6 diesel, $115 barrel of oil, $7 natural gas, with probably soon to be $8 or $9 again. So
this is all because of Putin, and if it's not because of Putin, it's because of the money that ExxonMobil is making.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me started on that. I hope we go to a segment where I can just complain about Bidenomics and everything he's saying because it's just devoid of reality, as my colleague Mr. Patterson just said. So everything progressives say, you're watching it unfold in real time. So you can only imagine what would happen if the progressives are actually really in power and they hold the keys to the White House or the Congress. I mean, the United States economy would just go down crashing, and China would laugh at this because of how high inflation would be.
All right, Graham, I'm going to give you the last word on this.
Well, I do believe that actually the problem goes back to the Obama administration, because as much as people on the right like to, call Obama all kinds of things and accuse him of all kinds of things, and I certainly did not like his politics at all. However, I think actually the Obama administration was largely a disappointment to the hardcore progressives, because he didn't go as far. He never went as far as they would have liked him to have gone. And so when Biden came around, and at least Obama was seen as a little bit of a stronger leader, whereas Biden is completely weak and you can lead him around by the nose. And so what they've done is, once Biden got into office, they said, okay, we're not going to miss our chance again. We are going to throw everything at the system that we can. We are going to completely overload it. We're going to go crazy. We're going to have drag queens in every school. We're going to all of this nonsense. And I think that's where they've the left always won by small incremental advances towards their agenda. And this time they've just they've exploded, and they've thrown everything, including the kitchen sink, at us. And it's backfired.
Well, soft on crime, tough on fossil fuels, and spending taxpayer dollars, as Andrew said, on outlandish schemes may just be the death knell of the radical left's attempt to take over the Democratic Party. We'll keep you in the loop, folks. Thanks for watching, and thanks to our C5 panel. The Midwest has been warned. You may experience rolling blackouts in the hottest of summer months. A long, dark summer appears to be on the horizon due to the destructive energy policies of the Biden bunch. How on earth did we get here? Easy. The U.S. lost 12.6 gigawatts of energy when Mr. Biden declared war on coal and closed coal-fired electric plants. Why, pray tell, did these plants get the heave-ho? Oh, Dave, what has the president done to our Midwest friends?
Well, not been kind. The Biden administration is patting themselves on the back because they've closed coal-fired power plants. Now, this is the epitome of delusional self-congratulations by a calcified intellect, if ever there was one, for doing absolutely nothing to address the weather. You know, by most standards, the US has 75 coal-fired power plants, and there are no more being built, nor are there any planned. But by contrast, the European Union has 468 and building 27 more for a total of 495. India has 589 and building 446 more for a total of 1,035. And our favorite China, the annual recipient of the Global Good Citizen Award, has 2,363 coal-fired power plants. And they have plans to build 1,171 more. Let's face it, our 75 existing plants, representing about 1.3% of the total new plants, is paltry by comparison. And, you know, you're right, a significant number of coal-fired power plants are being shut down or switching to natural gas. And when you look at it, you know, the Biden administration's rush to make living in America as miserable experience as possible is gaining momentum. And brown and blackouts will be just the beginning. Here in Tennessee, we're pretty fortunate in that we have the Tennessee Valley Authority and nuclear power. And quite frankly, we recommend that to all the states.
Well, that's interesting that you brought up nuclear power. And Andrew, I can hear you chomping at the bit, but you know, a large nuclear power plant went out just, I think, last month. And the reason it did is decrepit. It's 50 years old, you know. But of course, we stopped building new ones. Why? Because of all the environmentalists. Go ahead, Andrew. I'll let you pick it up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Mark on the radio the other day, he said it best. He said that Joe Biden had one job to do, and that was to keep the lights on. This
is Mark Angelides, our managing editor, who also does Liberty Nation Radio. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, he said that Joe Biden had one job to do, and that was to keep the lights on, and he can't even do that. But yeah, the whole energy infrastructure, it's decrepit. You know, you talk about the nuclear power plants. Yeah, that's terrible. We look at the refineries too. The refinery infrastructure is also deteriorating, and not only is it deteriorating, many of them are coming offline. You look at the East Coast. The U.S. East Coast has 9 refineries. That's it. Nationwide, they're about 100. So everything there's a crisis going on every front of the energy file, and it's not improving whatsoever. Not only that, the green energy that a lot of these states embrace, you know, Texas, for example, they have 20% of their power grid comes from wind and solar. That is obviously not efficient. And one thing I find funny about progressives and leftists is say that, oh, you know, green energy is going to help fight climate change and all that stuff. And, we're going to have, 100-degree Fahrenheit days for the coming decades. But green energy can't even sustain homes under these terrible conditions. Another thing, too, when it comes to energy production has not even returned to pre-pandemic levels yet. So when you have demand rising, which a lot of the EIA and the IEA say is happening, production and supply is not meeting that whatsoever. So everyone's talking about the summer, but I think the real crisis is going to happen in the winter time. Because I don't know if you guys look at the EIA storage report every week for oil, natural gas, distillate, diesel, all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I watch it every week. I look at that.
I have it on my television constantly.
Well, if you look at the numbers, production and injections, only the last few weeks, there's been a decent number of natural gas injections. But when it comes to diesel, when it comes to crude oil, when it comes to gasoline, that has all been declining. The withdrawals have been increasing. And now when you actually go into cooling demand season in the summer, those numbers are going to deteriorate. And then when you head into the winter, there's not going to be much supply left to help keep the lights on. So I think everyone's talking about the summer. Winter is my trajectory of when the real crisis begins.
Well,
it takes a lot more energy to heat a house in the north of this country through the winter than it does to cool a house in Texas, by the way. And I know it takes 1.21 gigawatts of electricity to propel a DeLorean through space and time, but I don't know the 12.6 number, what that actually means. But one thing is Biden, for the last, 20 years before he became president of the United States, was arguing for greater and greater energy prices for anything approaching fossil fuels. And also, if you had a nickel to invest in something, why would you invest in a refinery that may be taken offline by the president through some kind of regulation? You get no help there for any investment. And meanwhile, all the renewables, as you say, Andrew, are priced out of the marketplace. So,
and then we look at refinery capacity. Refinery capacity is already a maximum. Biden the other day said that the government may impose emergency powers to ensure these refineries are at max capacity. Well, guess what? Because how high energy prices are and how few refineries are, they're already at full capacity. So what the heck is this administration talking about when a refinery is already full? And then one more thing too. When it comes to diesel, the East Coast, there's already talk that they're going to have rationing of diesel because how inventories are declining. And if you have $6 diesel, I mean, this is just a disaster and the real emergency happening on the Eastern Seaboard.
Graham, I don't know about you, but I do think with lightning speed, we have gone from energy independence to just a holy mess on the energy front. And maybe you can answer this for me, but I don't see the logic in this climate change business, because if we're not making the energy here, but we're seeking it from places like Saudi Arabia and Russia, why is it okay for them to have, non-favorable green policies, but we have to? I mean, it's still coming from somewhere on the planet, right?
Yeah. Well, of course, none of this really makes any sense. The whole idea that, we're on some kind of drive to save the planet here is complete nonsense. I mean, we're now, we're getting more and more energy from countries that have, as far as I understand, the United States has among the highest, if not the most strictest environmental policies, environmental regulations governing our production of energy. And so the very idea that we're somehow trying to save the planet, but at the same time, we're relying more and more for our energy on countries that do far less to help the environment than we do is nonsense. And of course, the entire this entire green energy thing and this entire climate change / global warming, or as the rest of us call it, weather. This is all about control. It's all about controlling the economy in general. And it's all about controlling people's lives, because of course, if you don't have fuel, you can't drive around, you're no longer independent. People literally can't move around the country. I'm just wondering what we see first in the Midwest. Do we see first the pickup trucks towing the electric cars that can no longer be charged? Or is it going to be the electric cars towing the pickup trucks because the power's off and so therefore you can't pump any gas? Going to be interesting to see who wins out with that one.
I find that funny too, is that the administration says, hey, go buy yourself a $50,000 electric car. But imagine if the whole country drove electric cars, the power grid would not be able to sustain everyone driving these EVs. What the heck?
Well, not only that, but now that we have gone to having our military vehicles all being electrified, think of the negotiating capability it will require for our enemies to agree to have charging stations so that we can move forward into their land.
I didn't even know about that, Dave.
Wow.
Yeah. What year is the military supposed to go all electric by, Dave?
2035. And,
I hope that's restricted to renewable electric. If we can do anything to save the country, that's something.
Well,
that was a joke.
Yes, it was, and a mighty fine joke among the liberals in the Northeast of the United States. But we do have a problem. I mean, you talk about entropy prevails. We are going downhill fast, and it's all because of the Biden administration and their, as I say, calcified intellect in how they want to control things, but they are incapable of controlling anything other than driving it into destruction.
If I may just add one thing, I think Dave and Graham touched upon natural gas and then also energy reliance. This is the thing. It's not only relying on foreign markets for energy. The United States is shipping the energy it has left. So Europe right now, they're turning to the United States for a lot of liquefied natural gas. So they want about 80% of their imports will come from the United States. But guess what? The U.S. cannot satisfy soaring domestic demand coupled with soaring foreign demand. You already look at the EIA storage report data just from today, and you see that the natural gas inventories are below the 5-year historical average. Also, there's not a lot of terminal infrastructure to ship that much liquefied natural gas to Europe. So, the US is going to be running out of natural gas because Europe is going to be demanding more of it. And they can't turn to Russia because that's their main plan is moving away from Russia. And then, Biden, he's begging a lot of foreign markets to give a lot of their LNG to Europe. And if they do that, who knows? In the meantime, Europe's going to have to depend solely on the United States for a lot of its LNG, and the US can't afford it.
During the Trump administration, when we were in fact energy independent, we did have the capability to make a significant contribution to Europe. How is it that we can't do that or recover that in the future?
Andrew, the only thing I can say is I'm glad I don't know nearly as much about the economics of this as you did, or I would never, ever get out of bed. But let's ask ourselves this question. Are these the decisions of a benevolent, compassionate leader or that of a stubborn, cold-hearted extremist? Thanks, panel. The highest inflation in 4 decades, food costs nearly doubling, and gas prices $5 in many places, near $7 a gallon in others. This is not normal, no matter what the Biden bunch tells us. If it walks and quacks like a recession, well, it begs the question, when will the party in power admit we're in the middle of one hell of a Biden-made disaster? Go ahead, Andrew, scare the bejesus out of us.
Well, if you look at the baseline scenarios, a lot of Wall Street firms, market analysts, the U.S. is definitely heading to a recession. You look at the recent Atlanta Fed Bank GDP Now model, their numbers came in at 0% for the second quarter forecast. Now, this is important because their numbers went from 2.2% just a few weeks ago all the way down to 0% now. So that's a critical factor. The Federal Reserve, they raised interest rates to 75 basis points. Why does this matter? Well, because first of all, the U.S. Central Bank, they say that they want to have a soft landing of the economy, which means supporting economic growth and fighting inflation. Now, if I said that in a recent article, I was speaking to a couple of economists, and they said if Jerome Powell could do that, he should have his face planted on Mount Rushmore, because that's going to be an impossible feat to have. And it's just not going to happen. You have 8.6% inflation, and then you have a target rate of 2.25%. The real interest rate is still negative. So the Federal Reserve isn't doing anything whatsoever. What else is going on in this economy? Consumer sentiment has crashed. Look at the recent University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index. That went to 50. The PMIs are not great. The only thing you could say that's going well in this economy is the labor market. The job openings are near all-time highs. Wage growth is high. But then on the other hand, you look at the numbers too. Small businesses are slashing jobs. Wage growth has been annihilated by excessive inflation. So now the Fed, they're looking ahead. They're saying the economy is slowing, but their credibility has absolutely been dismantled. It's been eviscerated because the whole inflation's transitory. So when they say the economy is going to grow, 2.2%, flip that to negative 2.2%, and then perhaps they have an authentic discussion. So this economy, Karine Jean-Pierre, she said that this economy is historically great. I don't know what the heck she's smoking. I don't know what the heck she's talking about, but every data point you measure in the current economy, whether it's retail sales, which contracted, whether it's the manufacturing PMIs, which declined yet again, or if it's, personal savings rates collapsed, consumer credit growth has surged. So every data point, it shows a terrible Biden economy, and it's not morning in America, it's morning with a U in America.
Well, Scott, it's interesting because the ruling class, the affluent class, they don't really notice this. It costs a little more for my steak, but whatever, I still want a strip. But for the people kind of on the margin, the people that have to drive maybe half an hour to work every day and sit in traffic on the Beltway or whatever, they're feeling it at the pump. They're feeling it at the grocery store. How is it that the Democrats are the party of the little guy? I don't get it. There's a massive disconnect here.
Lisa, I don't think it's fair to blame Joe Biden or Democrats for the unprecedented greed we're seeing in the marketplace. Clearly, the oil barons are using this as a chance to soak the American people. The single dollar cost increase per gallon means effectively, it would be that would be an interesting to me economics question, Andrew, is how many thousands of families are now really going to have to cut back on something important to them for each dollar that an additional, gallon of gas costs. And of course, I know that this panel understands it, but for the ridiculous people out there who don't understand, that also affects the price of electricity to put in your car if that's how it's run. All this energy cost really increases the price of everything, and it's cascading, Lisa. We haven't even seen the likes of what's going to happen to the food costs if you can find it. I know that you wrote that piece about the scavenger hunt to find this and that on the market shelves. But once that food cost production level increases, we're going to see not only this huge increase in costs continue, but also then you can't even find the thing that you'd be happy to pay double for, and it is crushing the least of us, which are, as you say, who those progressives wrap their hero's cape in to protect, right? The people on the margin, and they are suffering the most for it.
Well,
yeah,
I did write a piece called "The American Scavenger Hunt: Turning the Game into a Reality." I've heard from so many people say, "I had to go to 3 grocery stores to find cucumbers." What? This is the United States. But then what happens when you have those rolling blackouts? What happens to those grocery stores? What happens to the frozen food section? Oops. There's a problem too. I mean, it's just, I think the politics of this are absurd because on its face, because people just can't live this way, Graham.
Well, yeah. And I'm totally convinced that this is absolutely deliberate. What's happening here, there's no doubt in my mind about it, because it's very simple. The harder you make life for people, unfortunately, the masses in general, the harder life becomes from them. The more they will cry out for government to do something, and the more they will be willing to give up any remaining freedoms they have in exchange for a little security.
So you're saying recession is all part of a big progressive plan?
I believe it is. I believe it's completely it comes back to the old rules for radicals. You overload the system. And I think they're trying to do it. And if I was actually a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist, I would even venture to go as far as saying that they are trying to rip the country apart at the seams before the midterms so that they don't have to deal with that horrendous, butt whooping that they are going to take at the polls.
I think underlying this whole thing, and we've kind of forgotten it because it hasn't reached the Washington paper above the fold, is the fact that we still have an incredible problem with our supply chain. And if you think that, just reducing the number of ships in the queue at Oakland or Los Angeles by 2 or 3 is going to solve this, you'd be wrong. Everything about the supply chain uses fuel. And that fuel, when it goes up, the supply chain cost goes up. And if you could ever get it back going again, we would see an even greater increase in the cost of goods.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, there are so many points I wanted to address with all points that Scott, Dave, and Graham mentioned. Off the top of my head, when Graham says the American people will be willing to give up their freedom for any ounce of security, I mean, you look during the height of COVID when both Republicans and Democrats passed that massive stimulus checks, gave everyone $1,000, $1,500. People were willing to accept that. People called for that, but they abandoned economics 101 because that money fueled this whole inflation we have today. That's putting $2.2 trillion into an economy created the 8.6% inflation because you had this, this huge supply of cash with too few goods. So it created this disaster. When it comes to what Dave mentioned about energy, yeah, he's absolutely about the supply chain and energy. So what the administration can do, actually a good report came out from the American Petroleum Institute last week. They said that one thing Biden could do if you want to ease the supply chain meltdown and lower energy costs simultaneously is remove steel tariffs, because steel is very important for not only producing energy, but also transporting and refining it too. So that's
Trump was big into that. Trump was all about removing the steel tariffs, right?
He was? No, he was what? No, he increased tariffs. He applied tariffs
from China.
Yeah,
China. Right.
No, that's not true. If you look at that's not true, because he applied steel tariffs on 4 southeastern nations as well. Taiwan, not Taiwan, the Philippines, and sorry, I escapes me right now, but 4 in total, 4 other than China. So that's the thing. But also, if you look at the recent BAA data, it found that import prices were 0.3%, but export prices were 2.8%. So this is also a huge U.S. inflationary centric problem. It's not just the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. She's inflation's happening globally, but it's mainly concentrated in the United States because, like I say, if you look at those trade prices data, that's crucial to see how much it is producing stuff in the United States compared to producing stuff in the rest of the world.
All right, well, I stand corrected. Well, no matter what kind of pretty face you try to put on it, the economy under Joe Biden is one holy mess. And when the man from Scranton campaigned on a long, dark winter, he should have warned us that it would last his entire first term. Thanks, panel. On today's Just for Fun, we're going to play Let's Get Personal. So here's the deal, as Uncle Joe would say. Everyone gets to pick a number and answer the question posed. One of these numbers contains the daily double, which means that the lucky panelists will get to answer 2 questions instead of 1. So without further ado, let's get it on. I'm going to start with Dave. Dave, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Choose your weapon.
4. I choose 4.
Oh, Dave picked the daily double. Ding, 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 ding. Okay.
I'm so excited.
Okay, your first question. What 3 adjectives would you use to describe yourself in a dating app?
In a dating app? Oh, it's been so long. Let me think.
Should we consult your lovely Miss Charlotte on this?
Yeah, you probably should. She would have a better memory. Let's see. I would say thoughtful, fun-loving, and intellectually astute.
Oh, do we agree with this panel?
Well, if it were my day, mine would be the opposite of all those adjectives.
Intellectually non-astute, right?
Yeah, right.
Unastute, whatever the word is there. All right. Anybody else have something they would like to say about themselves in a dating app? Or are you too chicken?
I have no dating apps on my device.
All right. You get a daily double, so you get another one, Dave. You get 1, 2, 3, 5, or 6.
2.
2. Wow, you're picking the heavy ones. If you get to choose whose face would be on the next postage stamp, who would you choose?
The next face on a postage stamp?
Personally, I would choose Graham. I think he would make a great person.
No, it has to be a trans woman of color if you want to get it through the.
I would choose Corey Ten Bloom.
Oh, Corey Ten Boom, the famous World War II.
Survived the concentration camp.
Yeah.
That's who I would choose. At least we would have somebody to look at when we're sending our mail who could be slightly inspirational.
Very inspirational. That's impressive. What do you think, Graham?
I think that the U.S. Postal Service should have been scrapped a long time ago, along with a long list of other government departments and agencies. So I would definitely choose Donald Trump, because if you put Donald Trump's face on a stamp, the Postal Service would shut down voluntarily the following day.
Trump derangement syndrome. Okay, since
Hey man, I would say, AOC. Imagine licking that stamp every time you send a letter. Ooh,
boo. All right, Andrew. Since that one, you had the final word, so I'm going to give you a chance. 1, 3, 5, and 6.
3.
3. All right, here we go. Checking that off. Assuming you could not have both, would you trade intelligence for good looks?
Well, I have absolutely neither, but in my old age, I would have to say I'd want the good looks. So I abandon any sort of semblance of intelligence I may possess.
Well, then you could put it on your dating app. Good looking Canadian in Toronto seeking.
But isn't the whole point of dating apps to find a partner? If I say I'm Canadian, then I'm not gonna attract.
Do I have to explain this to you guys? You don't know what a dating app is? Hello.
I'm not hip. Unless I.
All right, somebody explain to Andrew what a dating app is. No, never mind. We're running out of time. 1, 5, and 6. Scott.
Number 1, please.
Numero uno. Here we go. Are you ready?
As I'm going to be.
Name the one food you absolutely, positively could not live without.
Ice cream.
Oh, I second that motion. Anybody else?
Sushi.
I was actually going to say sashimi.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, TikTok, gentlemen, because you're probably going to have
to choose bait.
You're probably going to have to live without it pretty soon. The oceans are being depleted, but I think the cows have a little bit longer. So switch to ice cream for your favorite.
There's no more fish in the ocean? Are you kidding me?
Not going to be.
Oh, that's crazy. I'm not sure I believe that, but then again, what the hell do I know about fish in the ocean? All right. 5 or 6, we're down to who's left? Graham?
Yeah. I will take 6, please.
6. That means you left me with 5. I'll get even with you later. What is your favorite hobby? Something that you love to do?
Good grief. To be perfectly honest, the thing that brings me the most pleasure, there's a lot of things I would like to do more of that I just don't apparently seem to have the time, like, camping and stuff like that. But actually, the one thing that I really derive enormous amount of pleasure from when I'm at home here anyway and got some spare time is playing the harmonica.
Really? Wow, the things you learn.
Mm-hmm.
And does your better half pick up the kazoo and you guys are ready to rock and rumble?
Not exactly. No. She gets as far away as possible and shuts the door.
What's your best number on the harmonica?
Well, I just, I just play along with a lot of blues stuff mostly. Really? I've got a whole set of harmonicas in different keys, and I just kind of riff, yeah. But it brings me.
So you don't start out with like "Give Me a Home" with the Buffalo Bros.
I don't know. That's the classic, right? If you're gonna,
I think next time we have a retreat, Graham should bring it, and I'll sing. I'll say, "Hey, my pretty mama, I want to play with Graham."
Oh wow!
Thank you for that, Andrew.
Things you learn on Let's Get Personal. Okay,
we could have an open mic night next time. Open mic night.
Open harmonica night. That's totally cool. Totally cool. Number 5, I'm stuck with it. If you could choose your own description on your high school yearbook, you would write the person most likely to blank. The person most likely to, gosh, I have no idea. I'm completely blank here. The person most likely to be different. I have to say, my life has been not the run-of-the-mill average, go to work, come home. So I would say the person most likely to be different. I don't know. That's probably stupid, but you're welcome to chime in with the person most likely to and risk getting fired.
the person most likely to chime in and get fired.
I have this one. The person most likely to always bet against the New York Mets.
Mr. Red Sox here.
I know Tim's watching. That was for Tim.
All right. Any other yearbook requests that anybody has?
Good grief. I don't know. I think if it was me, well, I don't know what I would say if I was writing it myself, but I know that if my classmates at school, knowing me as they did, were writing it, it would be something along the lines of the person most likely to drown in quicksand in a remote jungle somewhere.
In a foreign country.
Yeah.
Well, whether you wanted to know or not, now you know. Thanks for tuning in, and please share your personal answers in the comments section of our Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter pages. Thanks for watching, and thanks to our C5 panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, surf on over to libertynation.com. Join us in the member zone, just $17.76 for the entire year. Special thanks to our fantastic editor and post coordinator, Frank Diorio, and our executive producer, Sarah Cowgill. I'm Lisa K. Donner, editor-in-chief. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a production of libertynation.com, where truth is making a comeback.